Okay, so on this episode of It Starts With You podcast today, I am so incredibly excited to welcome Angie Addison on to the episode to talk all things HR, people, supporting your organization. So, Angie, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you for having me, Julie. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh my goodness, we have such great conversations. We've known each other for years now, and through how did we even originally connect, Angie?
Boy, I would have to think back. I think it was a group, but then we got the chance to
Yeah.
work on a couple of clients together, and that's been amazing.
Oh my goodness. And I just every time that I get the opportunity to talk to you. We've met, we've talked virtually so many times and yeah, talked about clients and had an opportunity to engage that way, but we got to meet in person once and we were like firecrackers of just like talking about personal things and professional things and we could have talked all night.
We could have for
Oh my
certain.
goodness. And just like this, I was like, wait, we got to hit record. We got to start doing this episode. So I'm so excited for Angie to be joining us. Angie is the founder of Milestones HR LLC, a dynamic HR consultancy that's been helping small and medium-sized businesses thrive since 2014. With over 150 clients served, Angie and her team specialize in delivering top-notch HR solutions to companies that don't need a full-time HR department but still want expert guidance. Angie's got a background in HR and operations and really brings this unique holistic perspective to her work, helping businesses integrate HR practices that truly drive growth and performance. Angie's work includes creating efficient HR systems, improving organizational structures during growth or downsizing, which so key, developing strategies that attract and retain the right talent. She's known for making HR work for businesses, not against them, and she's passionate about aligning HR practices with company culture. I love this. When she's not helping businesses succeed, Angie loves to get outdoors, whether kayaking, hiking, or gardening with her family. A true nature enthusiast, Angie's a far cry from the evil HR director stereotype you might see in Dilbert or The Office. I love this personality you put in there. She's all about making HR human and impactful.
Yes, indeed.
Oh my goodness. And that's where I mean, this whole idea of just like humanizing HR, so important. So, Angie, you've been in this, since 2014, I think your business. How did you even get started in this? Give us a little context there.
Absolutely. Well, I have to tell you, I never knew that my calling was HR, but looking back, I did. I kept personnel files, if you will, on my friends starting at age 13. And they were they
What?
were around, yes, they were around things that I thought were their gifts and areas that I thought they could develop. And I was cleaning out my mother's house and I discovered these and I totally spaced them. And I thought, my goodness, I knew way back then, but I originally started college as a teacher and I was going to study teaching. And I happened to go to a business group with a friend who didn't want to go on her own. And I couldn't believe that. I'm like, man, people get paid to do this human resources thing. This is wonderful. So I switched my major the next day. I never looked back.
Oh my
It's
goodness.
been
That's
it's
so
been
funny.
great.
At 13, keeping
At
personnel
13.
files.
And I had my own file too of things that I could
Did you give
stretch goals
yourself a,
for
like a performance
myself.
review?
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, so it's been in my blood, but I just really love to discover people's gifts and empower them. We are all have different gifts. The whole person comes to work. And when you marry those things and have them work towards somebody's vision or mission, they're unstoppable. And I love being a part of that.
And one of the things that I love in all of our conversations, we were just talking about this before, is really rethinking and reframing how people see HR. So,
Yeah.
what is it like? You've got a captive audience of people listening to you. What do you want to tell them about what makes different, like what you want to curate for people to experience with HR?
Yeah, so sometimes when I meet folks and they ask me what I do, as soon as I say that I'm a human resources consultant or own a human resources consultancy business, they almost immediately shut down. And I think that there has been less than positive experiences sometimes with HR, whether it was policy police or I'm going to scare you into everything that could possibly go wrong and distract you from the mission or vision of your business. And we are quite the opposite of that. When you partner with us, we meet you where you are. There's no judgment. Oftentimes, we'll come into a business where the owner or an accountant or an office manager, business manager has done HR and they do it the very best they can with the number of other hats they wear. and they just didn't know. They've never been trained, just like I've never been trained in what they have. And so we meet them where they are without judgment. It's not a long list of liabilities and fines they're going to encounter. We just meet them where they are and say, okay, I think this is where we should start. And then we roll up our sleeves. So sometimes a consultant will come in and say, here's all the things you need to fix. Good luck with that.
Yep, go forth. Yeah.
Yeah, go for it. Good luck. We'll check back in 6 months. We're the opposite. We're like, okay, what are you comfortable doing? What should we take on? And we'll get right in there with you and we go forth in that way. And so we don't sell risk. We sell possibility using the talent you have towards the mission you want. And we can meet business owners and leaders right there with
Mhm.
them to move things forward. And we're checking in the whole way. Like, are we moving the needle enough? Do we need to, retool here? It's just a matter of truth and moving forward together, not a matter of truth and then wishing you good luck. So we're different
Mhm.
than most
Mhm.
HR consultancy practices.
Yeah, and I mean, you do have sometimes like a big mission to reframe how people, and I'm sure that that's conversations you have with these companies that you're working with as well to get them to think about it differently and more, what I'm hearing is more holistically about how they think of the talent in the organization.
Absolutely, this wider lens. Sometimes they're just too close to it, or it's all they've known. I've worked with a lot of family businesses where it's generational, and that the business came up under one generation and then the next generation took the baton and went forth, and they've continued as is, but the outside variables have changed, or maybe even some of the inside variables. Perhaps someone started in a position and we never evolved them because we didn't really inventory their talent, or we didn't know how to grow them, and so we've just pushed on and kind of kept them where they are. So we really take a whole look and get to the root cause. We talk a lot about in our team about truth telling. So
Mm-hmm.
when we come to an organization, we'll ask a lot of questions, do a lot of observation, and then we're like, gosh, do we see it the way they see it? Is our perception different because we have an outside view? And then we'll test that. We'll ask that leader or business owner, hey, we're seeing this. Is there any truth there? Like, this is the truth we're seeing. We're seeing this root cause. I know that you've got this path defined, but what about this intersection? Did you spend any time on that and really uncovering the truth there? And we get to a place where, like, all seeing the same, right? And seeing where we need to go. And then we help them. If they're like, gosh, I'm not sure, this is a lot of data. Good to know. What do I do with it? We actually help them, oftentimes beyond the human resources. Sometimes it's operational. We're very good at seeing what needs to be done, and we help that person navigate all of that. So it is a whole picture, a whole person too. I see a lot of our leaders, they are in a very lonely space,
Yeah.
right? They have to figure a lot of things out on their own. And we like to meet them where they are. And if they need a coach, we bring in someone like you, Julie, to help coach them and remove obstacles, perceived or real. And then we're helping on the function side to push that forward. So those dual purpose initiatives can be really powerful to move people forward.
Which is why I mean I so appreciate our relationship and connection is obviously at my firm we don't do HR, all the intricate things you do, and I've had the privilege of getting to work with some of your organizations, whether for coaching or some communication training, because you really are, when you're going in, you're looking at it as like, how do we support them and how do we bring along the right people to support them. And you touched on a few things, but you just want to emphasize some of the things I heard you say about the impact of bringing in an outside person outside of the organization, bringing in a consultant. I mean, I heard you talk about, obviously it's not always in people's wheelhouse, like they don't know all the HR things they need to know, and also this outside lens. Man, when we talk about family businesses, like what are some of the other benefits from bringing in an outside HR consultant like yourself?
There are so many benefits, and people can start wherever they want. So sometimes they'll say, Angie, I just need to know what I don't know. So they'll have us do an HR audit. I know the word audit's very scary. So sometimes we'll call it a review
Yeah.
when they're announcing we're coming on site, but it really is just looking at all of their HR practices and seeing what's working with their mission versus maybe against their mission or what's missing, helping them identify. And then we put those into priority. And again, we either do those for them, most often we do them. But I don't say, oh, this is something you need to correct. I actually tell them how to correct it. So if someone is able on their team to do it, they certainly can. With my help, we'll guide them as well too. Other times they're like, we're going to outsource HR altogether, and we're just tired of wearing this hat. We don't really know what we're doing in this area. We're creating a liability, right? So sometimes they're worried about what they don't know to a very deep level where they just want an expert to take over. We've done that. And then other times it's project based, like, gosh, we've had a family business here for years. We've never done performance appraisal,
Mm-hmm.
or we've never asked our team what we're doing well and what we need to improve. So we'll come do a voice of the employee, and voice of the employee is usually either on screen with each employee or at your site, and really harvesting what's working and what's not. And it's rich data. You can certainly do those things online, but when you have someone like us interviewing folks, you can really ask the follow-up questions, and then you come back, and we don't come back and just say, hey, here's what's working and here's what's not. Like, here's what's working, let's continue to do this. How do we create that for you? And then here's what's not, and here's some action items we should consider together. And they either take those and go forth, or we help with those, or what have you. So we meet them wherever they are
Mm-hmm.
to really not only subside worries. I say that's where some folks will start with us, but oftentimes also to energize and move them forward in their business.
Mm-hmm. And, I want to talk a little bit about that because, we were talking about this, like we both get this opportunity to go into organizations and kind of get this inside view with different organizations, different sizes, different industries. And so, from a kind of a themes perspective, I know some of the things that I'm hearing when I'm talking to organizations is things around retention and engagement. How do we get
Mhm.
the right people here, but then once they're here, how do we keep them either through development or through opportunities? What do we need to do? I know engagement scores have been a big conversation either for particular areas or leaders. So when you think of some of the conversations you've been having, what are some of the key things that you're seeing, as big focus areas right now for the organizations?
Yes, we just did a reflection, and when we reflected on like 2024, we did a lot of voice of the employee surveys. These were leaders that were not only interested in hearing what they're doing right, but really making a deeper connection with their employees, not just for an engagement score, not just for retention, but in the spirit of tapping into what they're doing well and continuing to do that, but also addressing any lingering things that maybe they solved one problem, but it bubbled something else up. Or maybe the career development for their folks had stalled out in some way, or they weren't having those conversations. And so we did a lot of that work. It then penetrated into the performance appraisal and the one on one discussions. And we had a lot of clients come back and say, my gosh, we're having discussions we haven't had in years. The relationship is very strong, like in the stickiness, right? The retention rate is there. And we're excited about that because they are just poised for so much success because they have the talent they need. They have people all pulling the same direction. Unfortunately, you can have people come to work and look like they're pulling towards the same direction, but have an undercurrent or a counter pull. And a lot of our organizations were like, man, for the first time, I feel like we're all in lockstep and moving the same direction. So that's been a joy to see this past year and a theme that's come up.
Mm-hmm. And it is so interesting, with different size organizations, with different types, some that are just rocking retention. And again, different sizes of organizations. We host this executive forum where we bring together executives from different industries to just have conversations on key leadership topics. And last year we hosted one with one of the senior HR directors for one of the branches of General Mills, so large organization. But we had a whole conversation around retention and how certain parts of the business have really strong retention and certain parts don't, and how, having turnover, some level of turnover can be healthy for an organization. So, but just thinking through, I mean, one of the key themes that I'm hearing you say and that I hear people say is just having a strategic partner to
Mhm.
think through those things and then what to do with that information.
Yes, absolutely. And someone who hasn't been as close to the relationship, right? Because relationships ebbs and flows, the business ebbs and flows, and I think having someone come in and observe. um, I just said this to a leader. He's very approachable. He's like, I am at my wit's end. I feel like I'm approachable. I've had coaching to be approachable, and yet I feel like sometimes people are holding things back for me. And I said, keep in mind, you can be the nicest person in the world, the most approachable, see people as whole people that come to work and know about them within boundaries, personally and professionally, and encourage them. But at the end of the day, you still sign their paycheck. You still have that signature power. And there is always going to be that no matter what obstacles you pull out of the way. And that was really an aha moment for him, that he was like, gosh, it's not so much what I am or am not doing. It is that power dynamic. And I've been able to really neutralize a lot of that because I am a safe space for his employees to come and say what they're really thinking. And I'm not the go between in that I'm running back to him and saying, okay, this is a pattern I'm hearing. I'm more so helping that employee find their voice. So we work on their talking points, and then they're coming back to me, and I'll say, what worked with our talking points? Were you able to convey that message? Did you see a change in that leader? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Sometimes it's, I got there and I just couldn't get the message out, or I soft stepped the message. And so, doing that work on both sides, the leader being in a space for readiness for change and willing to hear it, but also getting their employee in a space where they can speak their truth and find their voice. Because eventually we step out, right? When they get to a certain size, we say it's time for you to have your own HR professional on board, and we help them hire that person, impart our legacy knowledge, and then we step away and serve as a phone a friend. So it's my job, it's our job to really empower those employees to grow and learn in a way that serves themselves and the business.
Yeah, and really being that person overseeing all of it, like being able to, again, just an outside perspective. I'm
Mhm.
so curious too. Obviously, you're in there helping these organizations and helping these leaders, and you're, the leader and the owner of your organization. And so
Mhm.
I always find that every time I interact with someone, every conversation I have, whether it's just like this or with clients, like I grow and learn as a person, as a business owner. What would you say, Angie, are some of your biggest like leadership or lessons that you've learned in all of the time that you've had your business?
Oh, wow. Well, my business just celebrated 11 years on the 1st of February, which,
Congratulations. It's
thank
huge.
you.
It's huge.
Blows my mind, blows my mind. When I had thought about going out on my own, I had ran it by a few HR colleagues that were just in a group that I participated in. They told me I was crazy because HR people are risk adverse. I was raised by an entrepreneur. My mom was a custom carpenter, so non-traditional field for a woman. So I credit a lot of that. And I would say that there's some things I've had to learn along the way as a business owner and as a person is to ask for help and to be vulnerable. So there were days, I've had a lot of great mentors in my life, and a lot of people encourage me, and my clients are amazing. I mean, I keep a feel good folder.
There
And
you
when
go.
they send me an email or send me a card or say something great to me, I write it down. And on my doubt days, I will go back to that folder. But what I've realized is I don't have to suffer in silence. I don't have to suffer alone in that. And so I've found a couple of folks that I really trust. And on my doubt days, I will call them up and say, I'm having a doubt day. This is what I'm struggling with. And I trust those folks to say to me, like, yeah, you should worry about that. That's a problem. Or, hey, that seems like kind of the junk talk radio you're always telling us to shut off in your head.
I
It's
love
just
these little, we need Angieisms. I'm like, I'm gonna write all these down.
much to my kids' dismay. Yeah, this, I always say, like, there's a junk talk radio in your head, and how loud
Yeah.
it plays is up to you, right? So we got to turn it off. So, but there's days I just can't do that for myself. So I've learned to ask for help. I've learned to ask other business owners their opinion on things that I thought I had to figure out by myself. And it
Mm-hmm.
turns out they're all pretty much in that same space, all feeling like they got to figure it out for themselves, and we just don't. And I guess the other piece of that would be I've learned to be more vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
So when someone does take the courage, I used to just cringe to get feedback. Um, but I realize now, especially in the Midwest, if someone takes the time to give you feedback, it took them a ton of courage and likely to get really uncomfortable. They've got to
So
really
true.
care about you to give that feedback. So when they tell me now, I just listen with an open heart, mind, and ears, and then I'll just take it in and thank them for that. And basically, I'll fact or fiction it later. Like, is that perception or is that real? And grow with that. Like, if it is real, what am I going to do about it? So, learning to be vulnerable, I will be growing, learning, and changing every day that I breathe.
Mm-hmm.
How I look at life.
I love, like, I literally am like, I need to write these down. I'm going to call them Angieisms. I don't know if you have, I don't know if you've trademarked any of these,
Nothing
but
trademarked.
a
Yeah.
couple things that I want to call out that for any, that thing is anybody listening, like this is your story of, with your business, but I mean, would you call it the doubt days? And what did you call the folder you keep?
I have a feel good
Feel
folder.
good folder. Yeah. And
Everyone needs that.
everyone, yeah, I know I have talked to clients about this before, especially I'm oftentimes working with leaders, sometimes new leaders up through executives, and we're talking about a lot of times confidence, communication. We go through, giving coaching and feedback, presentation skills, like those types of things. And when I say you need that like boost and to remind yourself of who you are, like have that folder that you can go to. So now I'm going to quote Angie to call it a feel good folder that you can go and just see. And then when you have the doubt days, so having that, having the things people have said about you to remind you. And then also what I heard you say is surrounding yourself by other people who can kind of go with where they need to, like either boost you when you need it, kick you in the pants when you need it, and be really honest with you. And then what I heard you say too is vulnerability, which a lot of people can struggle with.
Mhm.
And what that means, we do this 2-day emerging leader program, people not yet in a leadership role, and some of their biggest fears about being in leadership. And something that always comes up is just this idea of leaders needing to be very like stoic and have it together all the time. And there's this balance. There's when you see these leaders who can lead with vulnerability, but also still be really strong and command attention. It in the right way. It's amazing.
It is amazing. It gets other people to be vulnerable too, right? And I can't tell you how many people I talk to in their profession, accountants, engineers, architects. They say, I've been doing this for 40 something years, and they have terrible imposter syndrome, right?
Mm-hmm.
They, what's holding them back from connecting with their direct reports is like they're afraid to be discovered as a fraud. And I just say no one can be an absolute expert at everything. There are gifts that you have though that you should share out. And when you don't have an area that you're perfected, like strive to learn from others, even if it's your direct report. I think a lot of leaders feel like, well, I've got to know everything. I can't be learning from direct reports. You can learn from all avenues in life. And that kind of openness and vulnerability is such a gift. It's freeing because
Mm-hmm.
you're no longer trying to pose or posture. And the other thing is it just opens your world. So yeah, I think being vulnerable is really important. And yeah, confidence is great. We are each given gifts, and we should maximize those gifts and have confidence there. And it's okay to keep learning in the areas that we aren't quite perfected in just yet.
Mm-hmm. And it might be similar, but which is what I was just thinking about when you were talking about was within the organizations that you partner with and work with. When you think of in all of 11 years, which again is congrat for anyone who's a small business owner, like such a big milestone, right? It's a tough world. So in your 11 years, when you think of all your kind of case studies of where you've been able to go and really make a big impact in the org, and they actually take what you recommend and implement, what are some of the like common themes or characteristics of the leaders you're working with? Like what are they doing differently than maybe the ones that aren't seeing the results they want?
That's a great question. I was just at a client this morning that I stepped back into after having graduated them. Graduating to us means they needed their own HR person, and she's doing amazing. But I was there for a special assignment, and we talked a lot about culture. I met with the employees, we talked a lot about culture and how things had changed there. And I thought about their leaders and what had changed in their leaders. The leaders had changed in that they were pretty heavy handed before. That culture is more consensus based, and the employees feel ownership. They want to feel ownership. They want to feel part of the destiny and the mission. And I think when I initially came there, it was more like, this is what we're doing. We don't care how this impacts you, employees. We don't really care maybe how it impacts those we serve. It was really heavy handed. And I've watched that leadership, a few things. One, I had them start meeting as a leadership team. So when I first got there, it was every person for themselves,
Mm.
and they were kind of all operating not by fault of their own, but with their own agenda because there was nothing solidifying them. So I solidified that leadership team. We broke down a lot of walls that existed between them, just misunderstandings, really. And we got them like agreeing to things like we're going to move forward this way. Even if we had some folks that didn't maybe wholeheartedly agree with that, that leader was to support and unite and be a team member to each other first
Mhm.
and then roll out this unified message. And that messaging then included, test piloting things like, hey, we're thinking of moving this direction. What does our team, our employee team think of that? How do you think that'll impact those we serve? And really getting kind of a pulse rather than rushing to, implement something and then having it fall apart or start to dismantle itself as it gets down the road. They've really come a long way. Yeah, it takes a little longer for
Mhm.
them to get things accomplished, but they've come together as a leadership team. They've come together as a team. They're serving more people than ever, and their mission is being lived. And I really feel like they're communicating in such an effective way because they're vulnerable with each other,
Mhm.
because they speak up, they found their voice, they've found equal footing. Some of the false hierarchy that was there has now been dismantled. And I could go on and on, but it's just
Mhm.
such a joy. Like that brings, that's why I do what I do. It brought me such intrinsic joy to
Mhm.
see them functioning so well. Is that HR? In part, I suppose, but it's likely and more likely, I would say, all their work to listen to the truths I had to tell, which were hard to hear,
Mhm.
to change their style and how they were approaching things, to shift their thinking about their employee population
Mhm.
and how they're thinking about them and treating them. And it's been an absolute joy to see them thrive.
And it's so interesting, like when you're talking about that, one of the big words that stands out to me that you said at the beginning of that was like the culture. You
Hmm.
know, when we think about the organizations you've worked with, when I think of when I come in from, a coaching or training perspective, the ones that really thrive are in it for the long haul. Like they know what I call it. We're not doing check the box solutions, right? So for me, it's like I don't want to just check the box like or a stamp like okay we sent them to training or like okay we implemented this HR initiative from your perspective. It's it's all building to shift a culture because culture change takes a while, right? We each individually have to show up to be committed to that change, but when you all show up and you can slowly start to shift the culture. And so what I'm hearing you say is like when the people are all showing up and willing to contribute to that and you start to change the culture as then again as an outside person you get to either come back in or you get to that message about the win. It's because you get to be like a part of their journey but they took it
Yes.
and really implemented it. So I always just like to frame that for those of you listening, whether you're part, a small team, and for those of you who have small teams, like you either run your own business, you have a small team, or you have a small organization, or whether you're a big organization, the culture matters.
It does.
I mean, we have just a few people on our team, like the culture that you create matters, small to big, and so taking that ownership. So and again just all the work that you've been able to do and helping people to do that is just so amazing. Angie, thank you so much for sharing. I know like we could talk about leadership and HR, but so many of the things that you shared I know are so relatable for people, not only from a perspective of rethinking HR and how you come in as that partnership, but then also just the lessons you've learned in running and growing your business. So what would be, sometimes I ask people, I'm going to switch up my question. What I always ask people at the end of my podcast, one question, but I'm switching it up for you because if you could shake people and tell them one thing about HR and how to think about it, Angie, what would you want to say to them?
Oh, that's a great question. Instead of the policy police, the Debbie Downer in the room, or Don the Doubter, or whatever, maybe old ideas have been there about HR, think about HR's mission to empower people to use their gifts. That is really what we show up to do with our clients. And I really want HR to empower folks. They can see the talent, they can see things others can't, and just help discover with them the talents, the multi talents people have, the gifts they have, and move that towards your mission. So, empowerment. Think of human resources as empowering towards the overall mission, vision, and the folks that help you get there.
I love that. So good. Okay, so people are going to be listening and be like, I need to listen more to Angie. I need to learn more from Angie. So, Angie, where can people find you and, stay connected and learn more about your work?
Absolutely. Well, we are out there. Our website is milestones, milestonesesh.com. So milestoneshr.com. I force myself to write a blog every month.
I love the
So
honesty there.
yeah, I do. So please tune in and read it.
Mhm.
Um, you can always give us a call too at 608-370-4642. That's my personal and business cell phone. And it's no obligation. We take 30 minutes to do a free consultation. We're happy to do that just to really evaluate whether we're in alignment or not with what you want to do, or we're the right partner, frankly. And we're happy to refer on if not. And then we talk about how to go about that. So there's lots of ways to get started. And it's not like, oh gosh, this is our only process. You've got to follow this process. As I mentioned earlier, we meet you where you are. So we'll meet you wherever you are, and wherever we start in the process is the right place to start if it's right for you.
Amazing. And we'll make sure we drop all of those, the links to the website and things in the show notes as well. So, Angie, thank you so much for coming on and having this conversation. It's always so enlightening for me as well. And everybody listening, please make sure that once you listen to the episode, send Angie a message, thank her, let her know what stood out for you, maybe what, you're taking away from the episode. And of course, share it out and tag Angie so that other people can hear all of it as well. So, thank you all for listening. And remember that it starts with you.
Thank you so much, Julie. This has been an absolute joy.